On a train to Chicago, I stayed awake all night in the club car. I was 17, enlisted in the Navy, and knew nothing yet of Cuba, Castro, the CIA, or Vietnam. When I returned to my village, the factory had gone on to Delaware. The rail station closed, but men still lived under the bridge by the crossing. I knew I must leave. In New York City, I found work as a foot messenger, delivering packages to elegant brownstones in Upper Manhattan. I kept a journal and recorded my encounters with professional dog walkers. I rode the Amtrak to Boston, where I was hired by Harvard to transcribe the poems of Emily Dickinson, and became dedicated to the proper placement of dashes. Evenings, I walked past the fish market to the harbor and its departing ships, the stone and glass shadows of the city behind me. I was at that edge where what happened next would be the rest of my life, or fog shrouding the shoreline. But there was a woman I met, and sometimes late at night in the dark, I'd rise from our bed and go quietly down the stairs to sit at the table with paper and pen, those words that saved me before emerging again under the lamp. One of the last true film noir movies was a film called Odds Against Tomorrow, and it was made in 1959. And it stars Ed Begley as a disgraced police officer in New York City, and Harry Belafonte as a Jamaican musician in a lot of gambling debt, and Robert Ryan in probably one of his most dynamic role as a psychotic Korean War veteran, and he's an out-and-out racist. Well, these three guys get together to plan a robbery in upstate New York, and you know it ain't gonna work. It's called Odds Against Tomorrow. Colette Theater, 1959. Here, excuse me. Here are three men driving through the fast fall-off of Newark light and shadow, following the Hudson River toward a small-town bank outside Albany that the disgraced former policeman swears will be an easy score. And you can tell by the look in their eyes and grim set of their mouths they need to believe it. The Harlem musician, tired of crooning to the au fait crowd in smoke-filled bars. The racist war vet, just out of the joint for hitting a man so hard he killed him. But, he reminds his girlfriend, he didn't mean to do it. Something snapped and he can't remember. Now, they're at a late gray shore, close-up of a half-submerged and ruined china doll, the ex-cop tossing stones at a crumbled can. In the nearby woods, the veteran points his shotgun at a startled rabbit, and we have to wonder why he hesitates until the frightened animal scurries away. He shoots, and then we understand. Of course the robbery goes wrong. We already knew this plan wouldn't work. The ex-cop dead in an alley, the musician and veteran running past the rail yard into the looming rows of oil terminals, and a confrontation that had to happen. But it's what the camera shows us next that makes us sit up straight. In a scene reminiscent of Cagney's finish in White Heat, they climb on top of tank and fire simultaneously to each other, the screen exploding in flame and rising smoke. In the aftermath, their scorched bodies laid side by side, and in this time, out of time, we know failure, desperation, even greed, each of us unrecognizable in the darkened theater of our collective breath, student and teacher, housewife and sales clerk, grocer and mechanic, the teenage couple necking in the last row, and who, the first detective to arrive, is asking, can tell the difference. There was one of the things, I consider a blessing in terms of growing up in the generation I grew up in. I grew as a teenager, early in my adolescence, rock and roll was happening. And a lot of that was, of course, driven by the black musicians in this country. And the effect that it had on my generation, the effect their music had, the effect that their struggle and their triumphs had, was very potent. And as a kid, I used to listen to this radio station, WKBW. And this guy, George Hound Dog Lorenz, was one of the first white DJs to play mostly, real black rock and roll for kids. It's called Radio Time. There's an epigraph from a Chuck Berry song, Havana Moon is low the moon, but high the wind. A howling dog, transistor radio crackling, Chuck Berry, cars, girls in school, and there, from the nightstand in my bedroom, something close to revelation. Ex-con, Kansas City joyride, broken down car in jail, yet this skinny black man and his guitar knew how to be 16. And here, too, the gravelly voice of George Hound Dog Lorenz, who each evening on WKBW, the greatest station on your dial, proclaimed the hounds around and reminded us listeners if we were hanging around the corner, we were dogging it. And I was transfixed as that DJ spun those forbidden records through the airwaves. Fats Domino, Laverne Baker, The Moon Glows, The Five Satins, Ann Cole, Joe Turner, The Clovers, Little Richard and the Upsetters, Etta James lamenting, all I could do was cry. And so it was I came to hear again those historians of desire, prophets of a change that would soon be mine. I should read Sunday Evenings at the Stardust Cafe. I'll read the title poem for this book, I think, which will effectively address what John was asking about, what's central to this book. Anybody ever see a film, Wild in the Streets? It's about a takeover. The premise is that they elect a 25-year-old kid. He's a rock and roll star, and they elect a president of the United States. Sunday evening at the Stardust Cafe. Young people smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, flirt. A strip of neon tubing thrust from between the breasts of Marilyn Monroe in a black and white poster on the wall. On the jukebox, Neil Young sings, "Old man, look in my eyes." Maybe I'll join them, promise to be quick and reckless. The young blonde with startling eyes that seem to reflect everything will take me to a quiet booth and back where we'll smoke and talk, as if we're really interested in the bad art hanging next to us. I can explain then why my life's important. I remember Marilyn, her mascara-lidded eyes, Presley censored on Sullivan, Lennon in New York that night at the Dakota. Why shouldn't she fall in love? But I don't want to say too much. For instance, I can't tell her how sad the silver-hooped ring dangling from her nose makes me feel in spite of my own gold earring. These kids look like Rimbaud, and as far as I know, they probably are. Think of it. A dozen reincarnated Rambos in a greasy spoon, pale and dressed in black, notebooks open to pages ready to record whatever's wrong. I remember a film, Wild in the Streets. The President of the United States, a rock musician, 25 and aging fast, whose platform was built on the premise that anyone over 21 was suspect, contemplates his life. In the final frame, a 10-year-old boy faces the camera and promises a future of bubblegum and baseball. But like with anything else, there's a catch. Back at the Stardust, the waitress, who is friendly, brings me a sandwich. An old woman mutters, squints at the menu and counts her change. Tourists ride horse-drawn carriages clapping down the brick streets or dance on the deck of a cruise ship entering the harbor. The kids take their notebooks and leave.